For the founders in the space with style and grace, I'm Brittany Antoinette, host of the Not So CEO talk show and founder of The Idea Girl. From work and wellness to bootstrapping and burnout, we cover all bases on building a brand, whether you're a seasoned vet or you're just getting started. Through guest interviews, water cooler combos, and office hours, we're paving way for a new era of Not So CEOs. So grab a notepad and tune in for unfiltered banter on branding, business, and bullshit. Shani Syphrett-Haynes is an award-winning global marketer, business strategist, and creative executive coach who helps companies and individuals build an inner compass and smart strategies to maximize value while maintaining integrity in a rapidly changing world. Her work focuses on simplifying practices that move things from good to great and removing barriers for more creative professionals to thrive. By day, she leads brand marketing campaigns for Pinterest. By purpose, she runs a boutique consulting firm, Jamila Studio, where she supports underestimated yet remarkably creative women of color in living abundant lives doing meaningful work. I'm sitting with a living legend, Shani Syphrett-Haynes.
I received that. Thank you.
If you don't know who she is, I'm going to need you to do your Googles and get on your Zoom immediate. Immediate. So thank you so much for making the time in your schedule to meet with me. I have so many questions.
Okay.
And most of all, I just want to, again, I'm just so grateful. I remember when I first learned of you and learned of who you are, you were one of the very few women, especially Black women, who was leading the marketing and branding space, especially a niche that I feel that is now becoming more commonly known. I feel like everyone now is familiar with what branding is and what marketing is. We all know what marketing is, but specifically branding and brand strategy. And I feel like you were a pioneer, or I feel like you're one of the first people that I've ever seen. I acknowledge and admire just your work and everything you have done to contribute to this space. So shout out to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Listen, I gotta give the flowers. Okay. You have to, what did Kanye say? You gotta give people flowers while they can still smell them. So
hmm
I'm one person that's gonna give all the flowers all the time. But I would love to just kick off this conversation and just ask you to share a little bit about yourself, your background, your childhood. Where did you grow up? Your academic career, and eventually, how did you make your way into the world of branding and marketing? Woo, I know that was super long-winded, but I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure that you're going to tell a story and it's going to lead to that. So I might as well just get the question out the way.
Yeah. So I guess let me start. Childhood. So childhood, I am the
Yes.
youngest of six. And I come from a pretty large family. So my mom is the oldest of 15, and my dad was the oldest of 11. So we came from a really, really
Wow.
big family. So pretty introverted when I was younger, but very creative. Like I was the type of person who I used to take things apart. So like at home, yeah,
Yes.
I wanted to see how things worked, and I think that has progressed throughout my career. When I went to college, I thought I was going to be a doctor, and I think a lot of
What?
young Black kids are just like, either doctor or lawyer. But I think art was always something that I was considering. So in college, I majored in biology, but I minored in art. And then I wound up going
Hmm.
to grad school for architecture because it was kind of like the best of both worlds. I could use the things that I learned in like physics, but also the art lessons that I had learned. So went to grad school for architecture and then did not become an architect.
Wow.
Yeah,
An
I think
architect, but the thing is like architecture. Like what even like inspired that? Obviously, you like to take things apart and put them back together, but biology, art, architecture.
yeah, so the designing of space and really mostly how people exist in space, I was very fascinated about how when you walked into a space, how you felt. And then
Yes.
also being, a kid and growing up around the time when HGTV was a big thing. And I remember
Oh. My
watching the
gosh.
shows and being like, this is a career. And then I wound up getting to work for a HGTV show while I was in grad
What?
school and just being like, okay, this is something that I could see myself doing. And I really had to like be in the space in order to realize that because I didn't know any interior designers. I mean, most of the folks that I knew that I grew up around, had regular jobs, jobs that, were pretty traditional. So
Right.
both my mom and my dad worked in the healthcare field. I've had other family members who work in finance, like I have an aunt who does taxes, like for the most part, pretty traditional career. So, I was a bit of the oddball with trying to figure out, what this creative life could be for me.
Wow, your journey is just so interesting, but what I love the most is that you give yourself the opportunity to try something new
Mhm.
and go after what it is that you want, despite the fact it may not be traditional in a sense, right? In comparison to what you know and what
Mhm.
you grew up around. But working for an HGTV show, I can imagine is so lit. Growing up, I used to watch shows on TLC like Trading Spaces. Do you remember
Mhm.
that show?
Yes, I do
That
remember
was my show with
places.
Genevieve Gordon.
Hmm. Yeah, my
And I
HGTV
used to
show.
the closest I ever got to architecture was playing The Sims. And
Mm, I did play The Sims
I'm a
too.
Sims girly. I
Mhm.
never played for the characters and the interactions. I literally played to build houses. There we
Nice.
go. There we go.
Sims and Roller Coaster Tycoon, I played.
Oh my girl. Roller Coaster Tycoon. Let me tell you, anytime I bring up that game, nobody ever remembers what I'm talking about. Building an amusement park. I remember I
Mhm.
used to build roller coasters. So this was something that was so wrong that I used to do. I used to purposely make the roller coasters go fast. And and the little car would fall off the roller coaster and it would explode. And then they're like, oh, you just had a roller coaster crash, and then next thing I know, my park is getting bad ratings and everyone's leaving my
Yes, you
park.
get bad
I would
ratings.
definitely say Roller Coaster Tycoon had a huge part to play in my journey to becoming an entrepreneur at maybe 9 years old.
Hmm.
Tell me, how did you go from majored in biology, minored in art, then you got into architecture, and then you got the opportunity to work on a show on HGTV? How did you pivot into branding and marketing?
Yeah, so the show that I worked on for HGTV was an interesting show. It was called The High Low Project with Sabrina Soto. And the premise of the show was we would make over a room for a ridiculous price. So like we would make over a living room for $60,000 and then we would have to make it over again for a reasonable price, like $6,000. So I spent
Wow.
most of my time being behind the scenes of the designer and helping her figure out how to source products that looked great but weren't as expensive. So I spent most of my days talking to brands. And in talking to brands, realizing how much went into branding and marketing and positioning. So positioning, we would work with brands that were, in the ridiculous high-end space, in the luxury space, but then we would also work with brands that were more affordable but wanted to still be aspirational. So that's how I actually learned about branding. I think all of the things that I've learned about in my creative career have really just been from trying them and like almost by accident. So like I learned about branding, I learned about positioning, which I think is super interesting, from literally like calling brands and like trying to get really great products that looked great and that people could afford, but didn't have the super high price tag.
Wow. One of the things you said is that how you ended up in this space was just by you literally trying. And I think that's something that we forget, right? We go to school, we get this degree, and you think that you're supposed to go in the direction of your degree. It doesn't always work out like that. I feel like it does for people that are lawyers, people that are doctors, people that have a really straight arrow, tunnel vision idea of what their career is supposed to look like. Versus when you're creative and when you're a creative person, that can manifest in so many different ways. And I feel like the ways in which it manifests through is through experience. Because
Hmm.
really and truly, we don't know what we like until we try it. I
Hmm.
have a very similar experience to you. I kind of ended up in branding and marketing on accident, but because of the fact that I was very open with my passions and the things that I loved, I ended up kind of just being in the right place at the right time. And then everything ends up clicking eventually. Can you give me a little background now on your corporate career and from HGTV on, how that has unfolded and what that journey
Yeah.
has been like for you?
Yeah, and I think because the way that I entered into the creative field was not so much in a traditional route. Like I didn't go directly to a design agency. Like the company that I worked with for the HGTV show was a production company that was used to doing one-off gig projects. So I did a
Mm,
6-month contract with them and then they wanted to hire me for another 6-month contract. So my entry into the creative role was very much like a freelancer consultant person. So
wow.
even though I've had jobs at agencies, at brands, at tech companies, I ran my own agency, like I'm so used to like taking everything on a project basis that I would say my career has really been just a series of projects. Like I say, I have a portfolio career. Like this is a ton of things that I've done. I
Yeah.
wouldn't consider myself solely an entrepreneur or solely a corporate girl. Like I blend between all of them.
You do both. And
Yeah.
you do both really well. What inspired you to establish Jamila Studio and what is its mission in supporting creative women of color?
Yeah, so again, out of necessity, out of trying, out of just, feeling things out, I started Jamila Studio because I was working at creative agencies and didn't see anyone who looked like me. There was
Mm.
no one of any color, honestly, in most places that I visited, and definitely no Black women. So,
Especially no Black
yeah,
woman.
especially no Black women. And, I had friends who said, "Oh, you work for this agency, you do this thing. Could you help my friend do this? Could you, like, I know someone who, like, I started working with, like, HBCUs and when everyone was starting up their natural hair care brands, like, I was the friend that everyone knew in marketing and branding that they just, recommended to folks that they knew. So I honestly started Jamila Studio out of the need that people wanted to work with people with someone who looks like them. So in the very beginning, I wasn't charging enough, but I was doing really great projects.
We learn, but we we
Yes.
we learn and we move.
Yes, I wasn't charging enough, but I was doing really great projects. I was having great experiences with folks. And then, I got a lot of my clientele from recommendations. And one
Mm.
recommendation was for a woman who had a connection to Forbes magazine, and they were looking for someone to start to write around women of color and innovation. So
Wow.
I took year of yes, I said yes to writing a column for Forbes. I wrote for 2.5 years around
Wow.
Black women in innovation because when you thought about innovation, you weren't thinking about Black women. So that was like 2017, 2016. And I remember the first people that I wrote about were folks that I really admire, but I felt like wasn't getting the face time or wasn't on, in these magazines. Brandeis, Danielle, Lauren Napier when she first started, Trinity from Gold. So like a lot of,
Mm.
Black women who were in this innovation, almost startup-y space that, I thought was dope. And like I, super admired them, but I didn't, I wasn't seeing them. Like I also wrote about B from Honey Pot. So this was like in the very beginning of their
Wow.
companies. For me, Jamila Studio has always been my way of getting more people that look like me, especially Black women, into spaces where we absolutely belong, but no one was giving the entry point to us. So from the consulting that I was doing, from the writing that I was doing, I was meeting a bunch of women that I really wanted to introduce to each other. So Chat and Choose started again from another need of everyone reaching out for coffee dates and me being like, I can't have a million coffee dates, but I'd love for you to meet each other. So it started with,
Like I'm one person.
yeah, so just it started with me just telling people, hey, the first Saturday of every month, I'm gonna be at this coffee shop from 9:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. So come by, it's gonna be great people, it's gonna be great folks. And that was what, 8 years ago. And I'm like, I've connected maybe over 500 women since then.
Wow.
And we still do it. We run it virtually every second Saturday now. And it's really just, I feel like for me, it's my purpose work.
Wow. Wow. I love that. Your purpose work versus probably your profit work versus
Hmm.
probably your passion work. For one, I'm going to just continue to give you your flowers once again because you mentioned literally being at the height. And I feel like actually this might not have been the height, but I feel like there was a period of time around 2015 and maybe 2016,
Hmm.
possibly even 2017, where Black female entrepreneurship was now becoming a thing, where we
Hmm.
started to see Black owned brands pop up in major retailers. I remember when the honey pot first launched and being so excited to be able to get access to these products and to even know that it was created and developed by a Black woman. But you being able to use your platform and being able to use your opportunities to put other people on is beyond admirable. And sometimes it does take for one of us to be put in that position in order to make those connections, in order to connect those dots, in order to amplify other people mission, especially Black women and women of color. So
Hmm.
kudos to you for that once again. You've been doing the work. Like I feel like I entered, the world of brand strategy like probably like around like 2018 in the beginning. I was just getting my feet wet, but it was so hard to connect and find other women who looked like me that had already been doing it because it's very far and few. Versus now, I feel that we have more creatives, especially Black female creatives and
Hmm.
founders more than ever
Hmm.
as of right now.
Yeah, when I started writing for Forbes, I think it might have been back in 2016, like the very end of 2016. If you saw a headline about a Black female entrepreneur, there was a number behind it. It was like the first Black female entrepreneur to do this, or the 10th to do this. And I was like, I just want to write about us and how we do great things. And it's not a numbers game. There's space for all of us.
There's space for all of us. This is not a numbers game. That needs to be quoted immediately. So, transitioning typically for people, from corporate to entrepreneurship to be challenging, but you managed to somehow coalesce and do both
Hmm.
with your not necessarily corporate, but it's kind of like a corporate freelancer, especially with the clients that you've had and the companies that you've worked for. Can you walk me through your journey and the key moments that shaped your path?
Yeah. I learn a lot. I get a lot by doing. I think for me, clarity comes from experience. And I don't
Hmm.
know if folks are like into human design, like I'm very much a 1-3 manifester. Like I need to know all the things I need to
Ooh.
bump my head a couple times in order for me to figure out. So I've learned by doing. So a lot of my work has really just been about making connections and following my curiosity. So I
Mm.
started off my career with agencies. Like when I graduated from grad school, I had an offer for a design firm, and then I had an offer for a marketing firm. And the marketing firm honestly paid twice as much. And I was like, you know what? I could try this, and if I hate it, I could always go back. I could always go back. And that's always been my
Mhm.
thing. Like I'm gonna try this, and if it doesn't work out for me, I can always go back. So that's how I got
Mhm.
into agencies. That's how I started working for myself for the first time. That's how I ran my own agency for 2 years. I've consulted, I've worked in-house in places, I've coached. For me, it's always if I have a curiosity behind it, I'm gonna try it. If it doesn't work for me, I could always go back.
I love that. I love that. And that is the key to giving grace, right? To giving yourself grace because sometimes we aren't brave enough to take a chance on ourselves and also know that we'll be there to catch ourselves when we fall.
Mhm.
So it's like, try this. And if it doesn't work, then we can just go back to this.
Yeah, and I also think for me, I think being comfortable with changing your mind is such a big act of self-love. Just understanding
Mm.
that, the place that you are in right now doesn't need to be the place that you're in next month. It doesn't need to be the place that you're in next year. And you can have your visions change, your motivations change. And I think oftentimes, especially if you are doing things in public, there's a lot of shame around changing your mind. But really,
Mm.
changing your mind is an act of self-advocacy. It also helps advocate for other people because it gives you the
Yes.
courage to do the same.
I love that. And I think we need to get rid of the stigma of being afraid to be seen trying.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I try and I do this in front of people, maybe they'll become inspired for them to try something as well,
Yeah.
you know? As someone who's navigated, both of these environments, what would you say are some of the most significant lessons that you've learned along the way?
That you can't do things alone. You, for sure, the idea that, folks that feel like they want to be self-made, that is definitely not a solo process.
Oh, yes.
You need people around you. You need people, um, I like to say when I'm, either advising or coaching people, it's really hard to see the full mountain when you're climbing up it. So you need the perspective of, folks who can, who've been there before, who can tell you where to watch out for, who are watching you go up it, who can give you the perspective because you might not be seeing the things that they're seeing, who can support you, who care about you, and just being really
Absolutely.
discerning, not only of just, wanting people in your circle, but being discerning about who you keep in your circle too. So
Mhm.
I am consistently not only building community, but evaluating the places that I'm in. Is this, feeding me? Is this getting me to where I need to go? Do I feel like I am getting as much as I'm putting out as well?
Mhm.
So for me, community, I would say has been the ultimate cheat code. As I mentioned, when I was first freelancing, all of my clients came from referrals. It came from, people who cared about me, who cared about the work that I was doing. And still now, even when I, in places where I work in corporate, I'm making sure that I'm building up community as well. So people feel like, just because we do the work in this one specific place doesn't mean that that is the boundary of our relationship.
Mm. There's this African proverb that goes, if you want to get there fast, you go alone. If you
Hmm.
want to get far, you go together. And that is literally one of the keys, right? To being able to grow and to be able to grow your business, be able to grow your practice. I have a very similar experience to you as to when I first got started, a majority of my clients came through referral. And if I'm being honest, my last few jobs that I had before I left corporate were all referral. I knew someone who knew somebody, and just having great character, right? And having people being able to know your mission, knowing who you show up as and how that can add value to what they're doing. There's nothing better than having people around you to support that mission. And also back to what you said, the importance of having a circle, having that circle of influence of people and being able to make sure that you're getting just as much as you're pouring in. And if you're not, then you need to reevaluate that circle. Could you highlight a specific challenge that you've faced at any time during your career, and how did you overcome it to achieve your version of success?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge for me, and it's something that I consistently um, struggle with, is I'm a wanderer. So there are folks who, when they were younger, they knew exactly who they wanted to be. They knew exactly what they wanted to be. Folks that can make a 5 or 10 year plan. Because I'm so much of a wanderer, I always struggle with that. So I have a
Mm.
hard time making hey, this is the thing that I'm, working towards. This is the thing that I'm going to do. So for me, just consistently checking in with myself, doing 1 year plans has been really helpful for me. Hey, what are the things that I can build to for the next year? And oftentimes, because I don't have this clear vision of where I want to go, I often get jealous of folks who do, who are just like so consistent in their thought, like so focused in their thoughts.
Hmm.
But I do think jealousy is a positive thing. It makes us consider the places where we might not be focused in our lives. So,
Hmm.
when I see someone who, for instance, says things like, "Hey, I've wanted to be this my entire life and I'm manifesting this and I'm working towards this." Like often I get a little bit jealous of that because I'm always like, "Hey, for me it could be, I could be doing this one day and then the next day I'm doing this." So really figuring out what focus is as someone who is multi-passionate and like has had a lot of things, has done a lot of things. It's really
Mm.
been a struggle, something that I constantly am struggling with, but it's something I'm learning to love about myself. It's
Hmm.
something that has allowed me to empathetically connect with a lot of folks who are in that space of, hey, I'm still trying to figure it out. Doesn't matter what age I am, I'm still figuring things out.
One of the things that you said is that jealousy can oftentimes help you point out or bring awareness to the different areas in your life where you actually desire more or
Mhm.
where you wish you can do things differently. So it's not that it's necessarily a bad thing, but what's most important is to actually pay attention to what you're jealous to, why you're jealous of it, and understanding that comparison is the thief of joy. You know,
Mhm.
your journey is your journey, and you being a multifaceted, multidimensional creative is actually something that can connect you to so many other people because I'm
Mhm.
also a multidimensional
Mhm.
creative. And it's kind of like, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And then where's the saying, jack of all trades, master of none, but
Mhm.
still better than just a master of one? Question: what is your self-care practice and how do you manage to put yourself first?
Self-care for me is, as an introvert, I need downtime. I need alone time. I need time to charge into myself, like plug into myself. I'm not a person who does a ton of meditation, but I write a lot. So I write, I create things just for me.
I
That
love
is part
that.
of how I recharge myself. And I also love being around art, all kinds of art. So the art of museums, but also the art of nature. Like for me,
Mm.
that is where I draw energy and inspiration, like the quiet moments and the places where I'm around things that can inspire me.
That is so lovely. And, you know, sometimes self-care and pouring into yourself isn't going to look like a manicure. It isn't going to look
Mm-hmm.
like meditation, like, Yongo Renge Kyo. It's not
Mm-hmm.
going to look like that all the time. Writing is probably one of the most therapeutic forms of self-care. Sometimes I'll get upset and I'm like, you know what? Let me grab this pen. If I'm not going to the gym, I'm definitely hitting up my journal. And it brings a lot of self-awareness to your situation.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
keeps me from picking up the phone and calling people.
Yeah, and I think because I do so much and because my life is so busy with things, self-care for me is never going to be a scheduled activity because it literally is
Mhm.
just like the rest of my time. So it needs to be that white, empty space. Self-care for me will never be a fully scheduled day. That just feels like work.
That feels like work. I can definitely relate to that. I feel like just being able to kind of go with the flow, you know, when we were kids and we didn't really have a sense of time versus adulthood where we're just like, I gotta run to this, I gotta run to that. I feel like that also kind of helps you connect to that childlike part of yourself
Hmm.
where you're just doing things based on instinct versus a schedule.
Hmm.
I love that. So, for this specific segment, one of the things that I wanted to talk about specifically was how to discover your brand's North Star. So, for full context, for those who are listening out there, a brand's North Star is its foundational purpose and guiding light, illuminating why it exists and what it stands for beyond mere profitability. It acts as a compass, directing all of the brand's endeavors and choices towards its overarching vision and values.
Hmm.
Now, that is a long-winded response, right? So, Shanae, what I would love for you to do is, in your own terms, define what is a brand's North Star.
For me, it's fairly simple. Your North Star is a legacy that you want to leave.
Ooh.
That's for big brands, that's for small brands, that's for giant corporations, that's for individuals. It is literally, if you no longer existed, what would you leave behind?
Mm. And I think for many of us who are running businesses, and this doesn't even have to be exclusive to business owners, right? I think it's more so about what is the legacy that you want to leave behind. Like, for example, we have fashion houses like Christian Dior, Louis Vuitton, Coco Chanel. These people have passed years ago, but one thing
Hmm.
that they've been able to leave is a legacy to continue their business, right? That's the only thing that's still staying. And these companies and the people that are creative directors, they are almost like holding a torch, right? And
Mhm.
ensuring that they're in alignment with the original vision of the brand. In in your experience, what are some effective strategies for entrepreneurs to uncover their brand's North Star amidst the noise and the competition in the market?
Yeah, I think if you consider, and a lot of people who start at a business are not considering the end. I think if you
Mm.
considered the end, it would shift your thinking, because I think when we are stuck in the beginning of stuff, we're stuck in things of like competition and chasing trends. But when you start thinking about the end, what would be the longevity? What's the longevity of what you're trying to build? I really like to think, if your business, though we might love our businesses, if it no longer existed, what will people say about it? Which can feel a little morbid, but it really is, when we start to think of building something that will outlast us, you start to get your planning correct. You start to get your business in line. You start to get the things that you say in line, especially knowing on the internet, things are going to exist forever. So if 10 years from now, someone looked at your brand, could they see the breadcrumbs of where it is now?
Mm. And to kind of just piggyback off of what you were saying, right? The concept of reverse engineering and
Hmm.
thinking about what is the lasting impression or what is the legacy that you want to leave and work backwards to figure out how can you establish that now by what you're doing every single day. Like
Hmm.
there's this saying, like think about what you want your life to be like in 10 years and are the actions that you're doing today, do they contribute to where you want to be in that 10 years. So I think that's very similar and I agree. I think brand owners can think about the end, right? But I think for a lot of us, we see that as like exit. Some of us, see us running our business forever. But the
Hmm.
thing is that we ain't gonna live forever.
Hmm.
So, but our businesses can, especially if it's a family-owned business. There are
Hmm.
plenty of family-owned businesses. We forget that a majority of the brands that are out now have started because of families and
Hmm.
familial wealth and generational wealth and
Hmm.
them being able to pass that down. And we have generations of CEOs coming from, the sons of the
Hmm.
family who decide to run the business. So I agree 100%. Keeping the end in mind and using that as your compass and your guide to help you formulate the kind of business that you want to build.
Yeah, and navigate the changing times, because purpose is something that you can run with for a while. Passion is often fickle. Not to say that you can't follow a passion, but your passions will change. So
Oh,
if
it
you're,
will burn out
yeah,
sometimes too.
yeah, yeah. So if you're thinking long term, hey, what is the purpose of this work that I'm doing? What impact am I leaving? What relationships am I building? What connections do I want to have? Who do I want to be? That can keep you and sustain you in a longevity where oftentimes, our passion could be, the thing of the week.
Right. Very true. Very true. Which is why like trends and fads are, they're not long lasting, right?
Hmm.
They're here now and then they're gone tomorrow. I like to say there's this saying that I have, if your why doesn't make you cry, your business will not
Mm.
survive. I say that all the time. I need to do an episode on that. Sometimes when I feel off track, I just go back to my why and I'm just like, yeah, you know what? That's what I'm doing it for because your passion can run out. Like I feel like
Mhm.
passion is like a fire sometimes. What if you're not doing things to keep that fire or that passion burning? It eventually fades out, right? But the purpose as to why you're doing it in the first place will give you enough reason and gumption to ignite that fire again.
Yeah, for sure. And then we think passion is so internal and individual. It's important, but it's very individual. And as you
Yes.
exist as a brand and a business in the world, you have to be for the your clients, you have to be for, the people that you want to affect. So purpose brings you out of that just internal space of figuring out, what is my purpose to connect with folks? What impact, how am I helping people? Where passion can, honestly just be internal and inward.
You worded that so effortlessly. Passion is internal versus purpose is external. That's exactly what it is because purpose helps you connect with something outside of yourself. And
Mhm.
as you were mentioning earlier before, the importance of community. Sometimes if it's just you doing something, it's so easy to give up, but knowing that you're impacting other people's lives, it's a little harder to give up.
Mhm.
And it honestly gives you inspiration to keep going. There's some days where I'm just like, oh my God, I can't do this. And then
Mhm.
someone sends me a DM or someone gives me a message like, I love this, Brittany. And I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm going to keep going. And it's not
Yeah.
because I'm seeking validation, but sometimes where passion runs out, your purpose becomes more evident. And
Mhm.
it's important to surround yourself and remind you, write it on the wall if you
Mhm.
need to, write your purpose on the wall if you need to. Can you share an example of a brand that effectively embodies its North Star? And what can other entrepreneurs learn from their approach?
Mm. There are a lot of amazing brands that are out right now, but I would say one that has been standing out to me recently is the brand Topicals.
Yes.
And I've heard the story about them selling out in Sephora and the founder, because she's so community minded, recommending other brands. And that
Mhm.
to me is legacy building.
Yes, yes. I actually worked on topicals and I
Oh, nice.
it's one of those things where I'm like, whenever I like see their ads and I see everyone, whenever someone tells me that they love topicals, I'm like, yay, I helped launch topicals. I
Nice.
was
That's
there. I was
amazing.
there in the beginning. But Alameda was amazing. And one of the things that I think was the most important to her when launching was her story, her founder story, which was she, was dealing with specific skin conditions her entire life. And she ended up she got to a point where she felt left out. She
Mhm.
felt like she couldn't get the same makeup products and the same skincare products that everyone else would get. She used her challenges and the things that she was going through to build her brand essentially. And because she couldn't shop in stores like Glossier, because the products wasn't going to work for her, it wasn't going to solve her problems. She wanted to create a company or brand that embraced those skincare conditions and to dress it up in something cute and pretty that people wanted so that way they felt a part of that skincare wave that Glossier brought for us, right? Like Glossier, I feel like was a time in its
Yes.
own. I need to do a whole breakdown on them because
Hmm.
I feel like Glossier changed marketing. Glossier did so many different things differently that had a lot of other skincare and beauty brands emulating over time. Like Glossier was the top of the line benchmark when it came to beauty branding.
It was honestly the first creator brand, like the first like real creator brand.
Yes. Emily Weiss of Into the
Hmm.
Gloss. I used to read Into the Gloss and to see how she was able to, but you know what? She was doing
Hmm.
years of interviews, years of building community. So by the time she actually launched, it was like, wow, you can actually see what it was that she was doing. And Topicals, I feel like, is a great example of a brand that takes something like their problem and being able to make their product a solution to that problem because there's so many other women who are dealing with skincare conditions like
Hmm.
hyperpigmentation and eczema, and they are so inclusive and so diverse in everyone from their team to the products that they produce. Like you can walk into Sephora and see topicals, like
Hmm.
it just stands out. But that is probably one of my favorite brands. So whenever someone says like Topicals is one of their benchmarks. It always makes me so excited because I got to watch it and I got help to help build it in the beginning. And just knowing the founder's story is literally one of the key ingredients that's missing from so many other brands.
Yeah.
It's that solid brand story that makes you stand out for sure.
Yeah. And you've been out here building brands for a while.
Oh man, girl, I've built so many brands. As of you, you've done so much as well. Speaking of everything that you've done, what has been your favorite project or your favorite campaign that you've ever launched?
Easy. Favorite project is I worked on the launch for the HBO show Lovecraft Country.
Oh, I'm sorry to be that dramatic. That is one of my favorite shows. I promise you, I have watched it 3 to 4 times. Because then they're not coming back. I wish there was some way,
Yeah.
somehow, they would develop a second season. How was that? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
it felt like kismet as someone who a Black girl horror fan who got to work on a horror show that was showrun by a Black woman,
Wow.
and told the story is so the story was so layered. I think I remember when I hadn't read the book when I first got assigned to the project. I was working with an agency. I hadn't read the book. And I remember reading the book over a weekend and then watching like the first like the rough pilot and just being like, this is literally going to change the game. And the way that we were able to launch it, like we had had a whole plan for it, and then the pandemic happened, and then we had to like switch the entire plan online.
What?
But it was so great. Like I got to work with other Black creatives to do it. I got to work with a lot of Black influencers, got to work with a lot of Black brands. Um, it's still my favorite project.
I could just imagine that is a dream. That is one of my favorite shows. And I feel like the writer and the director took a huge risk
Hmm.
with this show. Like I was watching it, I was just like, they letting this be seen on TV. And there was just so many hidden messages. I learned so much and it inspired, I'm pretty sure not only me, but other people to do their research and to find out more.
Hmm.
It was because of Lovecraft Country that I found out that there were still sundown towns in the
Yes.
US. What?
Hmm.
Like, what do you mean there's still sundown towns? So again, you are doing such amazing work. And it's important to have people like you that look like you, that share your sentiment, that share your experience, that have your voice to show up in these rooms and to create these experiences for us for enjoyment. Because I'm pretty sure Lovecraft Country would have been completely different if there was not a staff or people of color and Black people on set to
Oh,
make
absolutely.
manifest that into fruition. Our voices are important, and I feel that it's empowering when you take up room in these spaces.
Yeah, and that's why community is also very, very important to me because I also don't want to be the only person in those rooms that look like
Absolutely
me.
not.
It is no fun.
They don't get the same
I
jokes.
yeah, but also like I love working with people that I consider friends, and in order for me to continue to do that, I have to continue to lift people up and put people on and bring people with me and
Yes.
the connections. I'm always going to consistently do that because there's room for all of us, and when we're together, we make things better.
Absolutely. And that's the part about having an abundance mindset. It's understanding is that not only is there more than enough for me, there's more than enough for everybody. I remember seeing this TikTok, or I think it might have been a Twitter post, and she said it's so important to have people who look like you that share the same culture as you at work, because she's like this one coworker she had, he had on a turtleneck. So she
Mm.
goes, "Okay, Carl Thomas."
Yes, I saw that. I see you, Carl Thomas.
I see you, Carl Thomas, because only we are gonna get that. And those are the little sparkles and glimmers of joys that we see in working environments, especially oppressive work environments.
Hmm.
That is a whole nother story for a whole nother day.
Hmm.
How does having a clear North Star impact decision-making processes within a business, from product development to marketing strategies?
Yeah, I think it should be the thing that you ladder up to. It should be when you're determining what's the thing that you're going to measure, your North Star needs to have North Star metrics. Beyond like I know as we are going through the transition of the social media realm and how people are measuring things, you need to make sure that if your North Star is, bringing more people to the table, if your North Star is, changing the face of tech, if your North Star is, eradicating poverty, you should have a metric. What is the ultimate measure of that? And from that metric, that is how you should trickle down all your decisions.
As entrepreneurs navigate the complexities of running a business, what advice would you offer to stay aligned with their brand's North Star and to avoid distractions or detours?
Hmm. Someone who fairly gets distracted. Write things down. I think
Mm.
oftentimes when like new trends come in the moment, we aren't taking the time to really reflect on them. Which is why I think writing practices, not only for, personal reflection, but for yearly business reflections are really important. Write down the things
Mm.
that you're actually doing. Do quarterly check-ins, do yearly check-ins, make sure that you are connecting back to the things that you said you were going to do and how far you have moved away or gotten close to it.
Checkmate. It's that simple, right?
Mhm.
Just to write things down, especially when you get a plethora of ideas and you want to switch things up all the time. Writing it down also helps you hold yourself accountable towards reaching those goals or
Yeah. Are you doing the
crossing those
things that you
tasks.
said that you wanted to do? One of the things that helps me a lot when I feel like I'm stuck and I'm not getting things done is to do a weekly time audit and to
Mm.
see where am I actually spending my time? And am I spending my time in the places that I say are important to me?
I love that. A weekly time audit. I do weekly reflections, but I
Mhm.
haven't really thought about doing a weekly time audit because really and truly, where does your time go?
Mm-hmm.
And is your timing congruent to what you actually are doing? Like if I say, I want to make $100,000 this year. Are you
Mm-hmm.
actually spending your time doing money producing activities and putting yourself in the right rooms to meet the right people? Are you actually implementing strategies to help you reach this $100,000? Because time, I feel like, is expensive. It's either
Mm-hmm.
time or it's money that we're
Mm-hmm.
wasting, right?
Yeah, and also making sure that you're doing activities that produce, $100,000 activities. You can't be spending your time
Right.
on $10 activities because you could outsource that.
Very, very true, especially knowing when to outsource
Hmm.
versus when you should take something on yourself. I feel like that is something that can also distract you from your North Star. Sometimes doing the really tedious, menial work, granted, it does need to get done. But as
Hmm.
you said before, seeing how you can outsource so that way you can focus on the bigger mission at hand and staying on track with your North Star. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for that breakdown. I feel like I have a great understanding. I mean, granted, I'm a brand strategist, right? But I feel like your idea and your definition of a North Star is just so simple. It's not complex, and it gives me, and I'm pretty sure listeners, a reminder to what is the legacy that you want to leave behind and how are you actually working towards that? Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.
What are you currently working on and how can we support? I know Chat and Chew has made its debut back not
Hmm.
too long ago. How can the community continue to support you, uplift you in all that you do, and how can we pour into you?
Yeah, yeah. So Chat and Chew, we meet every second Saturday of the month. It is a virtual meeting. Sometimes we do in person meetings, and it is really for creative women of color who want community, who, might have big ideas, but might feel like they're the only person in the room. Like their family doesn't understand them, their friends that don't understand them. Like as someone who community has been such a big part of how I've gotten to where I've gotten to, I'm always going to give that back. So Chat and Chew will exist for the foreseeable future in some capacity. I'm always going to be a community builder. So if the person who's listening, they can't come, invite someone, invite another woman of color.
Tell a friend to tell a friend because
Hmm.
community is important, especially on the journey to becoming an entrepreneur. Add being a creative on top of that, baby. That's a lot.
Yeah, and also, and Chat and Chew is for everyone. I say it is also for our entrepreneurial-minded corporate women too, who are
Yes.
just charting their own course. Because a lot of times, even when you're in a corporate world, it feels like you're building your own thing. You have to create your own pathway. Like I love the quote by June Jordan. It's as a Black woman, I've always had to invent the power my freedom requires.
Mm, yes. If you had any advice to give, especially maybe just even some advice that you wish you might have received in the beginning of your journey that might have made your path a lot less, I guess, difficult. What is
Mhm.
some advice you can give to a not so CEO out there who is trying to navigate entrepreneurship or even being a creative?
Hmm. When the road gets tough, and it will, don't burn it all down. Repurpose.
Ooh, yes. Don't burn it all down and repurpose. Do you have like any examples of like what that might look like, for example?
Yeah, so if you are leaving a job because it was hella toxic and you weren't feeling supported, but you did a great job, make sure that you are building case studies from the work that you've done,
I
no matter
know
where
that's
you're
right.
going from it. Oftentimes because we've existed in these toxic places, we want to run so far away from it, but don't leave the lessons that you learned. Don't leave the work that you've done. I see it a lot when folks who transition from corporate jobs to entrepreneurship and they're like, I don't want to touch anything that was, I did back then, but that is your power. And do not let those folks who took your well-being also take your power.
Absolutely. And it's so crazy because sometimes we forget that it was us who put that work in. Why would
Hmm.
you let someone take away the skills that you acquired, the knowledge that you've learned, all because of a bad experience? That is something you get to take with you. That
Hmm.
is your right. Just because things didn't work out with the supervisor, all of the projects you've worked on, transferable skills that you've
Hmm.
gained, you get to take that with you wherever you go. I hated one of the jobs that I had, but I learned project management.
Hmm.
And because I held on to that, I was able to apply that to running my own creative business. Project management is essential to
Hmm.
becoming a creative director. So I agree with that 100%. You don't have to burn things down. Sometimes just repurposing and rebuilding, maybe even building around that, but at least you have a foundation.
Yeah.
I would love for you to share with our listeners where they can find you, what platforms they can add you on, websites that they can visit you on so they can stay in touch with you and get updated on Chat and Chew and how they can also be a part of your community.
Yes. So I am Shanae Syphrett at Shanae Syphrett on all the platforms. And then Jamila Studio is just www.jamilastudio.com. And you can find Chat and Chew and all the other things that I'm working on there.
Oh my God, Shanae, thank you so much for spending time with me today. Thank you so much for dropping all of these gems for me and everyone who's listening. Again, I am just going to give you your flowers. Thank you so much for the work that you do. It's truly been an honor to sit here and to chat with you and to be let in on the beautiful mind that you have in your processes. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. And also thank you for letting your life be an example too.
Oh my gosh. Hugs, virtual hugs. Thank you so much for everyone tuning in. Until next time, bye, Not So CEOs. Thanks for tuning in to the Not So CEO Talk Show. If you love what you're hearing, hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. To stay in the loop, stack our newsletter, The Paper, and follow us on social media at Not So CEO. In case you need assistance with building your brand or you're a creative wanting to go from freelancer to founder, book an office hour session with me on our website at notsoceo.co. Until next time, remember, being self-made shouldn't compromise self-care. This is Not So CEO, signing off.